Hi, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Leading Innovation at Work, the Future of Business. I'm your host, Lori Rowlandson, and in today's episode, I'm really looking forward to learning from Harsha Vachher. She's the Manager of Smart Building Solutions at Bentall Green Oak. Hi, Harsha. How are you today?
Thank you, Lori. I'm good. Thank you for having me today. It's great to be part of this.
Oh, it's really my pleasure. Thanks for joining us. I'm really excited about your topic. I just think it adds such a different dimension to our speakers today and certainly does relate to our audience in the built environment and prop tech and CRE-tech. In today's episode, Harsha is going to share with us why cybersecurity should be of growing interest and concern to real estate professionals. And a lot of organizations are relying on technology in the Internet of Things, like property managers and corporate real estate professionals need technology to get to the next level of value in experience and savings. But this reliance on technology introduces new risks that we need to be aware of. And you'll remember back in 2014, you might remember that Target, which is a big retail clothing store, was the subject of a very public security breach. And they discovered that the cause was actually related to the fact that they gave their HVAC provider connectivity to their network so they could introduce some technology and some automation and get some efficiency in their building controls. But the hack was actually done through their HVAC provider, and they were able to steal all kinds of credit card numbers and personal data through that back door into their network. And it didn't go over very well with their customers. That really significantly impacted their brand. I think there was a lawsuit involved. So all of this to say, it's not an IT issue. It's also a prop tech and corporate real estate issue as we become more reliant on technologies. So just before we dive into your presentation today, Harsha, I'd love to hear a little bit more about your background and your journey and your career path. I'd love to hear a little bit more about your current role, but I'd love to hear about why you're so passionate about cybersecurity and how you got to where you are.
Thank you, Lori. So my career is very diversified. After finishing my master's in computer application, I started my career as a developer in telecom. Whole day busy doing coding, testing, and deployment and all that stuff. Then I decided enough of coding and decided to move on to start my journey on security. Then I landed in a company where I started to work on security with smart cards, security dongles, and then moved on to IoT, that is Internet of Things. Mm-hmm. I actually moved into research and development where I used to work on niche technologies and started working on devising solutions in IoT. The solutions were like various ranges across all verticals: retail, healthcare, smart wearables like an Apple and a Fitbit watch. So I used to create devices, used to test new devices, new communication protocols, cloud, everything. Like I was the one-man army. Though there was a team, but then you know how research and innovations are. Less budget, so you have to play the role of one-man army. So that I was. I also was looking at the security aspect of these solutions, so that's where I developed my interest in security. I was working in various verticals, smart homes, smart buildings, and smart cities being my favorite. That's the reason I decided to pursue my career in smart buildings and security. So at Bentall Green Oak, I'm leading the development and execution of smart building technologies, cybersecurity, and innovation roadmap. I work on the innovation part. We test new technologies. I devise the roadmap, how the cybersecurity at our property should be like, what should be included in the roadmap, how we should start the journey. And it's like very exciting. I'm very much passionate about technology. Though initially I was not. Like as a kid, you know how you think of becoming a teacher, an air hostess and whatnot. But then as I started getting more and more interest in technology, started talking to my dad about it. So from there, my passion to technology started. And now finally, I'm in smart building and cybersecurity space.
I love that journey. It's so interesting. And I smile at your comment about not having a budget for innovation and just plowing through. And I can hear an undercurrent of persistence. And I'm also so impressed with how you've reinvented yourself. And just through curiosity, which is fostered by innovation, it's taken you on to new paths that have caused you to become more sophisticated and resourceful. So I love that message, Harsha. Thank you for sharing a little bit about your story. So it looks like you prepared a short presentation. We'd love to hear a little bit about it, and then I'll probably ask you a few questions.
Sounds great. So I thought of sharing some of the stats on cybersecurity, not only related to real estate, but in common.
Yeah.
So as we know, the global cybersecurity market is worth more than $107 billion in 2015, whereas it is expected to be $170 billion by 2020. So that itself is propelled with the need of cybersecurity across all organizations. And we know it's one of the top concern and risk across all organizations. We cannot just say only large organizations are susceptible to cybersecurity or data breaches. It's across all organizations of all sizes and all industry. So if we look at this slides and we look at the image, so it's scary, I know. But the intent is not to scare, the intent is to create awareness. So this slide is from Compass Intelligence and CABA. So this slide depicts the building elements and at what level each element is at risk. So if you look at it, the security systems, which is the CCTV and the video surveillance, they are rated as the highest risk among all the building elements. Well, the reason behind this are cameras. Yes. So it's known that cameras from some manufacturers are very easy to compromise. And to your surprise, the manufacturers are not in a plan to do any security modification on cameras for various reasons. Like some, they think the camera is secure and no need for it. And some, they don't have the budget. Now, if we look at the slide, we see the HVAC and the building automation system, which is the key system in any building, is at the mid-level of risk. Well, this surprises me, but as we all know, if building automation system is being compromised, the consequences are very serious. Like hacker can take control of the temperature settings, can set it high or very low, and can lead to building evacuation. Now, this slide is from a report published by Marketplace, which says that the #1 attack vector for ransomware is remote desktop. So before we go deep into this, I would like to say ransomware is a kind of infection which infects a computer or any mobile device and restricts the access to various files, software, and it could be as serious as causing a permanent data destruction. So we all know we remotely access our building systems, like HVAC or the building automation system is a very common system that is being remotely accessed by our staff or our vendor. For simple reason, like they want to monitor the temperature settings or they want to control the temperature setting. Instead of going to the room, they want to do it normally. So because the system is being remotely accessed, it leads to more prone to a ransomware attack. And as per the statistics, it's 84.5% of the ransomware infections. The reason was remote desktop.
Wow.
Now, this is the stats from Cybersecurity Ventures, which predicts that a business falls victim to a ransomware attack every 14 seconds by 2019 and every 11 seconds by 2021, which is scary because we do a lot of remote desktop, and we have seen in the previous slides, remote desktop is one of the reasons behind majority of ransomware attack. Next comes the password. We all know the importance of password in our life. Like we all keep passwords for our bank accounts, our LinkedIn accounts, Facebook accounts, and also for accessing our building systems. So we should make sure the passwords are strong, secure. So not only we should keep password, but it should be a combination of something we know and something we have, like entering a password and then getting an alert on a mobile device, which says that tap it or enter this code to access the building system. Sadly, password breaches are predicted to be on a daily occurrence by 2020.
That's great, Harsha. A couple of things I just wanted to underline in your message there. I love that first slide that you showed with all the different categories of risk. And I think it's really helpful for us to frame risk and understand risk, whether that be through our supply chain or through self-perform in some of our buildings, to look at those in discrete categories. I thought your comment on temperature is interesting. And a lot of people think that so what, you're hacking the temperature, so you're just going to make the occupants uncomfortable. But for locations like data centers that are required to have cooling to keep the equipment operational, and of course data centers have a huge amount of dependency for revenue generating activity, to have a data center go down as a catastrophe. So something as simple as a temperature adjustment could create a cascade of critical failures with too much draw and dependency on the infrastructure of the building. It could have, seriously impact the equipment or the technology. I loved your just simple suggestions around passwords, something and have versus the name of your dog and 1, 2, 3, it's being more sophisticated with it and using, capitals and something that's numeric, but do it in something that is not abstract, something that means something to you. And, another aha that I heard from you was around the cameras. That's fascinating to me because one of the things I'm researching for my book right now, and I'm studying a lot about artificial intelligence. And a lot of the inputs for artificial intelligence come from video input. And looking at what's happening in China right now, it's incredible what you can do with artificial intelligence and video recognition. So again, it's not like, they're watching you go get a coffee or something like that. They can really gain a lot of intelligence. Who are these people, Harsha? Like, why don't they use their genius for good and not for evil? Like, what do you think they're trying to accomplish by doing this?
So there are various reasons behind, like the threat vector is various, like ranges from nation states, hackers, and for the simple purpose. Like nation states, we all have heard of this term. They are the organization that do organized crime for the simple purpose of getting hold of the sensitive information to leak to other states, other countries, or to other organizations. And then there are hackers who do hacking of these systems for two reasons. First, to do a brand reputational damage. Second, to get hold of sensitive data. Then there is another threat vector that comes from insider. Yes, it's a little bit scary, but like our current employees, our former employees, or vendors who have access to our system, they are the insiders that pose the greatest threat. Some of it is malicious and some of it is unintentional. Unintentional, like a building technician not knowing what activity it could lead to, is doing something and then lead to a compromise. Like a building technician is accessing the personal account on a system and accidentally download a ransomware or a virus, which causes a malfunctioning on the system. So these are some of the unintentional things. And then intentional is like a disgruntled employee, not happy with the supervisor, not happy with the organization for various reasons, performance, this and that, can cause a serious damage because these are inside the organization. They have access to our critical system and data.
I see. Do you get much exposure to what's happening globally? Do you see, is there a difference in how different countries are approaching cybersecurity? A lot of our speakers are from different parts of the world and the audiences as well. Do you see it different in North America versus in Asia versus in Europe or Australia? What's your thoughts?
Well, when it comes to technology, the technology remains the same irrespective of nation. So same goes with cybersecurity. Irrespective of nation, the underlying tools and techniques we use to mitigate the risk, we use to fight cybersecurity, keep ourselves safe, it remains the same. But yes, Every nation has their own set of policies, they define their own rules, they have their own budgets to spend on these measures, but the underlying thing, it remains the same. But yes, when it comes to data standards, some of the nations have their own data standards. Like we have heard of GDPR in Europe. So that's the standard Europe has defined to protect EU citizens from data privacy and data breaches.
I guess my underlying question to my previous question is, one of the things I'm so interested in is the discussion between innovation and risk. And the way that's being handled, the balance of those decisions is being handled very, very differently by country. So you look at China versus, some of the concerns with privacy. And what's your thoughts like around, one of the things I worry about is how risk management could create a cooling effect on innovation. And although it's important, how do you see those things working together in creative tension? Like, how do you get the right balance of protecting yourself versus progress? And, they almost seem to work in opposition. But what are your thoughts? Can they work together?
Yes, innovation is something I'm passionate about. Coming from a research and development background, this is something I love to do. And as part of my current role, I'm also leading the innovation roadmap at Bendel Green Oak. So at Bendel Green Oak, continuous focus on is to do innovation on new and upcoming smart building technologies. We not only invest in leading technologies, but some of the bleeding technologies, just to understand what works and what doesn't. So as you said, yes, it's very important to maintain the right balance between innovation and security. Because innovation, as we all know, it has its own risk and security focus is very low. And the reasons are pretty simple. Like it's a startup, they don't have enough budget to invest in security. They came up with a quick product. They want you to try and test without understanding the actual impact of the product on your building or on your brand. So some of the things that we practice at Bendel Green Oak so that we go ahead with our innovation roadmap, I would like to share with you.
Yeah.
So we do a security assessment survey with all our vendors. So the survey comprises of very simple questions on what kind of policies and procedures you follow. Let's say how and where you host your solution. Have you done this certification? Is the device certified, or is there a roadmap to do a device certification? At what level the testing is done, and various other questions. So the intent is very simple. Out of this, we get the details of the overall security posture, and based on this, we provide recommendations and we know how better to cover ourselves from risk. But yeah.
No, please continue. It's very interesting to hear your approach. I'd like to hear how, like, what's something cool you're working on now? Can you share with us how have you actually applied that? Like, just tell us what you can. Don't tell us anything confidential, obviously, but love to hear about how you actually apply that and something cool that you're working on now.
Yeah, that's right. So one of the things that we do is looking for a solution with a startup. The solution looks very good. It's very impressive, and I'm pretty much confident it will take the organization on the leading edge. But as we all know, startup, they don't have money to invest on security, and the security posture is very weak. So in such case, I would suggest work together, invest in the startup, and believe me, it will be a win-win situation for both.
How do you actually approach the budget process? Like, oh my gosh, especially like what you're saying is it's on the increase. Like, how on earth, like when you're talking to your CFO, how on earth do you plan for the budget? Like, could you just maybe talk about the rationale or kind of the steps that you think through when you're recommending the budget for the following year?
So one of the things, Bendel Green Oak is not the owner of their property. We property manage. So definitely, yes, budget is a big issue. So what we do is, instead of putting the entire solution in the building, we practice the approach of doing a pilot first. In this way, we cut down on the budget and we save on the security compromise. So the way we do is, we pilot a new technology in a building in a very limited and controlled space. So this way, other systems in the building are not part of this pilot, are out of the scope, and we prevent ourselves from any security and operational compromise. And also the budget is low. So once the technology gets proved, we get success, it's very easy to get the budget approval to do a portfolio-wide rollout. But yes, sometimes we do fail, but that's the innovation all about. You learn from your failures and you get the success on the next step.
I'm a big fan of pilots, right? Because if you're going to fail, and let's face it, if you're putting yourself out there and you're being progressive, you are going to fail and you're going to learn from it. But pilots allow you to contain that and learn from that, right? Like the light bulb wasn't invented the first time, right? It's a series of failures that lead to successes. And I think sometimes it's easier to get approval for a pilot than it is for, you know, a big $300 million investment and then have it be a disappointment. So I appreciate how thoughtful your approach and recommendation is around it. So just to help the audience with just some plain language things, because it's such a big, you know, it's changing all the time. It can be a bit daunting. If you had to give our audience maybe 3 to 5 suggestions on what they need to do as next steps or what they need to be aware of, like what's that one big thing that they need to make sure that they walk away with, and maybe a couple of little bonus things.
Okay. I would start with top 4 key ingredients. So the first and the important is asset inventory. It's really important to know what is there in our building. To your surprise, many of the property managers and operations manager, they don't have the list what is there in the building. So it's really important to create a list, what devices we have, what software version we have, what kind of devices and mechanisms are in place, network tools and equipments are in place. So once we have the list, we know what is there, it's very easy to identify the risk. So I would say, start with creating the list of inventory. Second, people. So we have people ranging from property managers, the entire operations team, our vendors. So it's really important to educate our team. So I would say, devise a plan to train the team. As we all know, a well-trained staff is a first line of defense. Create security awareness by simple things like publish a monthly or a quarterly newsletters, pick small topics, ransomware, antivirus, phishing email, just to educate the staff. Like if you get an email, you have $100 deposited in your account. Do not click on that mail, delete, and inform your IT security team. So such simple tools and tricks will help educate the staff. Next comes policies and procedures. I would say start developing the process, because this is one of the area which is very much process driven. Process on the operation side, no process on the security side. So we should follow the same process driven approach on the security side. Start creating simple process like a maintenance process, which defines the steps to perform regular system maintenance and update. Like a staff should regularly maintain the system, should regularly update the system to make sure we have latest software, we have antivirus programs, everything up to date. Because from a security point of view, it is really important to keep the system up to date. So create a process so that everybody follows that. Next comes an incident response plan. As we all know, we all are prone to cyber attack. What steps to take if there is an attack? So for that, we need an incident response plan. Create a plan, define an organized approach, share it with your staff that these are the steps you need to take if being attacked by a hacker or by a ransomware. Last but not the least, technical specifications. And this is my favorite. We should always make sure we install devices and software of industry standard. If you have to go with a certification or a device testing, don't hesitate. Just go with the device testing. Tell your vendor you need a certified device, because a certified device of industry standard ensure security. And take simple steps like do not share your passwords with anyone. You do not use general accounts like admin, sysadmin. Used a name account like Harsha Vachher. It's a named account. I'm only authorized to use this account. So use named account to access your building systems. Maintain logs. Regularly audit your logs to see any suspicious activity. So with these small steps on the technical side will prevent from any cyber incidents. So these are some of the key ingredients I would suggest. It's a must to have on any cybersecurity roadmap or a plan.
I really love just what you've outlined, Harsha, because it's simple, it's mentally palatable. Just some key things that struck me was, of course, better data, better decisions, right? The first thing that you said was just having a catalog. And I know, I agree with you. It sounds so fundamental, it sounds so basic, but it continues to surprise me how many building owners do not have this information. And so your organization, our organization does the same thing, but better data, better decisions. Hey, ABCD, right? I think the other thing that you suggested that I think is really worth underlining is sometimes we blame the technology, but it's really the processes and the people. and you have to look at everything together as a system. So having site procedures, training people so that they don't click on phishing things, PH phishing, buying equipment of industry standards as part of your capital planning process. Don't just buy old technology and replace it with old technology. Use it as every time you touch a building is a chance to make it smarter and more secure, right? And then the last thing is incident response. All of those other things are more on the proactive side, but incident response. So if something happens, what do you do so you're not in a panic? You actually have a process for it. So I love how holistic and more of a life cycle view you provided on that answer. Thank you for making it easy for us. And for myself, who's not as involved in that world, I really appreciate such a coherent explanation. Okay, Harsha, I have one more bonus question for you before we sign off. I'm a huge reader. I am a super book nerd, and I read like almost a book a week through audiobooks. And when I go on holidays, I read books. I love to hear book recommendations. So could you suggest a book either on this topic or a book that's really profoundly affected you in business? Do you have a book that you'd like to share that?
Well, I'm not a big fan of reading books now. As a childhood, I used to read Nancy Drew, but now I only read I'm more into reading blogs, publications, and articles. So yes, I would say start with reading blogs and articles that are being published by organizations that give you insight of what's going on around us. So it's really helpful to understand what's going around and learn from there, rather than experiencing the same and then learning a lesson.
I love that because that also supports micro learning. Like not everybody, I think a lot of the reasons people don't read books is because it's like, oh, I have no time. Like I got to sit and read a book. I have no time. So your point is don't not learn, don't not read. There's lots of different ways that you can learn and continue to develop yourself in those little micro learning experience, either through magazine articles or blogs and things like that. So, but just read in whatever works for you in your system. So that's great advice as well. The anti-book recommendation, I accept that. That's a good one. Well, I don't have anything further to, before we sign off, do you have any parting comments, Harsha?
Yes, I would say just be aware of what's going on in your organization. Do not think that our organization is safe. Every organization is susceptible to cyber attack and data breaches. So keep yourself safe. Start following simple steps. I know cybersecurity is a very long journey and it's a continuous journey. So I would recommend start engaging your staff, encourage them to participate in security trainings, engage your vendors to make sure they comply with your enterprise standards. Include cybersecurity at all stages, right from procurement to contracts, to commissioning, and finally to operations. So I would say, keep yourself safe and be cyber smart.
That's great. Harsha, thank you so much for reminding facilities managers, building owners, and corporate real estate professionals of the importance of cybersecurity and how relevant it is to their profession. And thank you for giving us some suggestions that are relatable to people in a completely different profession. I know clearly you know and you own this topic inside out, but for somebody that is on the outside of that, we really appreciate a plain language view, and it will help us really achieve some of the goals that you've outlined. So thank you so much for your time today. Well, that's it for this episode of Leading Innovation at Work. This is Lori Rowlandson and Harsha signing off for now. I hope this information has served you and provided you with a few practical tips to help you go out and lead change and make a difference in our industry today.
Thank you.